Marla and the Magic Ink Bottle, written by Paul Anthony Martini and illustrated by Bianca Taylor. If you're friends with Marla, then count yourself the luckiest you know. But if we started our story 2 months back, I'm afraid that wouldn't be so. Marla wasn't very outgoing. In fact, she liked to stay inside, drawing creepy pictures of monsters with eyeballs big and wide. Some had giant whiskers and tentacles colored green. Some had silly noses with fangs that made them look mean. She'd hung them on her bedroom wall, placing award ribbons on the best. First, second, and third place stayed on her nightstand, and she tossed out the rest. Her mom and dad were quite concerned, but it was her artwork, so what could they say? Though they tried and tried to have Marla make some friends and go out and enjoy the day. The one thing Marla looked forward to tomorrow was a field trip with her school. It was to the Rivertown Museum of Art. She thought, wow, this will be so cool. She pictured giant-sized monster artwork throughout the museum halls and paintings of slimy creatures hanging on the walls. She kissed her mom and dad goodnight and snuggled into her bed with visions of her artwork winning first prize in a contest racing through her head. The next morning, Marla jumped from bed, dressed herself without a fuss, ate her breakfast, grabbed her books, and then went out to catch the bus. The bus pulled up, and when Marla got on, her schoolmates stopped and stared. They rarely see her play outside, and her spooky pictures make them scared. Marla ignored the whispers, grabbed a seat, and opened her sketchbook. Then a boy behind her leaned over the seat to try to catch a look. "More creepy creeps from Marla," the boy said as his schoolmates laughed out loud. Marla just kept on drawing. She knew one day perhaps she'd make them proud. Quite soon the yellow bus pulled up through the museum gate. Marla was first in line to leave the bus. She simply could not wait. Once inside, the tour began, of beautiful paintings one after the next. For Marla, this was unexpected. Where were the pictures of big green creatures, she thought. If I was giving awards, these would all be rejected. As the tour moved on, Marla stayed back to have her own look around. She came to a door with a long wooden stairway that spiraled all the way down. Marla followed it down to the basement floor, and then she paused for a rest. But over her shoulder she caught with her eye a quite curious and mysterious chest. Marla kneeled down in front of the chest, dusted it off, and removed what looked like an old ancient cup. With the flick of her finger, she lifted the latch, and the curious chest began to open up. A burst of green light shot out of the chest with little white sparkles quite tiny in size. And Marla peeked into the chest. She could hardly believe her eyes. In the chest was a tiny magic ink bottle, but glowing like the end of a space rocket. Marla looked all around to make sure she was completely alone and slipped the small bottle into her pocket. She made her way up the stairs and rejoined the museum tour. She was just in time, for the visit was over and the classmates were heading towards the door. All the way home from the museum, Marla imagined what she'd draw with her new bottle of ink. Perhaps a 3-headed octopus with bouncy blue eyes and spots all in pink. When Marla got home, she flew up the stairs, barely waving hello to her dad. She went into her room, sat at her desk, and turned to a new page in her drawing pad. All through the night, she drew with the ink. Each creature she made had a glow. She drew a creepy werewolf, a slimy sea monster, and a blob with big feet down below. When she was done, she taped her pictures to the wall and had a proud look upon her face. She judged each monster as if it was an art contest and gave the blob the nod for first place. After a nice grilled cheese sandwich and a cozy warm bath, Marla made her way towards her bed. She took one last look at her wall and thought to herself, maybe the museum could use these pictures instead. As the night went on and Marla was fast asleep, that's when her pictures started glowing much more. Off the pages her creatures climbed and tiptoed their way towards the door. Marla's three creepy monsters headed down the long road and made their way towards the town. When they arrived, you wouldn't believe all the chaos that started to go down. The werewolf made his way to the grocery store and once in started gobbling up all the food. The frightened people ran out with their arms in the air screaming, "That creature is nasty and rude!" In the center of town, a young couple sat by the fountain, looking up at the stars, feeling happy they finally met. When out of the fountain arose a slimy sea creature who splashed them and got them all wet. The giant green blob made his way down the sidewalk, leaving trails of green goo as he went, causing the pedestrians to slide across his green trail of goo and landing face first on the hard cement. Down at the sheriff's office, the phones rang off the hook with complaints of creepy monsters and all that had happened so far. So the sheriff put down his guitar, gathered his flashlight, and jumped into the shiny police car. When he got into town, the place was a mess. It looked like a storm had blown through. The grocery store was in shambles, the fountain was dry, and the streets were all covered with goo. The sheriff took out his magnifying glass and looked at the goo, then followed the trail where it went. The trail led down the road through Marla's front yard to a door that looked slightly bent. The sheriff knocked on the door. Marla's mother opened it up and said, "Sheriff, how do you do?" The sheriff replied, "Well, there's a ruckus downtown and I followed the goo and it seems like it led right to you." Just then, Marla opened her eyes and looked up at her wall. She noticed her monsters were gone. She heard her parents downstairs and the voice of the sheriff. Just then, she realized she did something wrong. Marla walked down the stairs and said to the sheriff, "Excuse me, sir, I have something to confess. I stole a magic ink bottle from the museum today, and I think it's what's causing the mess." The sheriff and Marla's mom and dad shook their heads and said, "Marla, do you realize what you've done? It's not right to steal and these monsters are causing a fright." Just then, Marla had an idea. She said to the sheriff, "Follow me now, and I think I can put things back right." They went back upstairs. Marla sat at her desk and took out her pen and dipped it inside of the ink. Marla drew a superhero pencil with big strong arms, an eraser on top of his head, and a cape with stripes colored pink. With a green glow, the pencil climbed off the page, looked at the sheriff and said, "Leave this one to me, my friend." Then he flew out the window and headed towards town to bring the disturbance to an end. The super pencil circled the werewolf, who was munching on snacks, and with a swoosh of his eraser, which was on top of his head, zigzagged over the werewolf, and poof, he was gone. "No time to waste, must erase the others," the mighty pencil said. 2 blocks away in the duck pond, the slimy sea monster dwelled. "You can't catch me, I swim too fast," the mischievous sea monster yelled. But the super pencil was quicker. Oh, much faster for sure. And with a shake of his eraser head, the sea monster was no more. Now everyone knows a green blob moves quite slow, so he really wasn't too hard for the pencil to find. So as quiet as a mouse, our hero circled the blob, then snuck up from behind. And just as the green blob turned to see who he faced, the mighty yellow pencil quickly had him erased. Just then, Marla and the sheriff pulled up in the police car in time to witness the blob's defeat. Suddenly, all of the people in the town came out of hiding and gathered in the street. They screamed and cheered, "Hooray for the pencil! Hooray, you saved the day!" But the hero pointed at Marla and said, "It's her you should thank for the creature's defeat, for it's Marla who found the way." All at once the town circled Marla and broke out in song, singing "Hip hip hooray, for she's a jolly good fellow." Then Marla walked towards the hero. "Please return this bottle of ink. I have learned a lesson, mighty pencil colored yellow." So, this brings our story up to date, 2 months since the Night of the Creatures have passed, and now finds us at an art contest, which features Marla's creations at last. Marla's parents were so excited that her picture did not have a creepy monster with yellow eyes and warts around its face. Even the judges were surprised. They awarded Marla the ribbon of first place. But if they took a closer look at Marla's picture of pink tulips painted in a row inside the bed of 2 little red wagons, they would have noticed and most likely raised their eyebrows, for the flowers were actually pink dragons. The end. Maybe.